baby boomers.
I used to be with it.
Millennials.
Okay, boomer.
Generation X.
What's going on?
And Gen Z. What do they have in common? Not a lot, it turns out. But one thing they can agree on is that this is the political podcast they want to listen to. Welcome to Not My Generation, the political podcast that looks at political events, news, and happenings across the world and at home through a generational lens. Your hosts are Dr. Emily Stacy and Professor James Davenport, two political scientists from Rose State College. But the views expressed on this program are solely the views of the host and their guests and do not reflect the views of Rose State College, its administration, faculty, or students. Coming up on today's program.
That's why we should not be in the predictions game, even if we study this for a living. We too have no idea what's going on.
The further you get the wisdom correct, it comes, but also the further you get from things like metadata and API and things that are going on that you're having to legislate, but also having to educate yourself on as you're trying to regulate it. I think that's dangerous, and it's been extraordinarily dangerous in the 21st century.
Shanna's like political science police. Anything you say may be used against you.
I swear a lot of this is just to put things in your face for people who would normally find that inappropriate.
That's enough shameless plugging. I'm done now.
And now, here are James and Emily. Good morning, Emily.
Hi, you're much more tempered this time, James.
Well, you know, I've been a little under the weather this week and trying to get back on my feet from that. We've got I'm very excited about today's podcast. We have some returning guests that are going to be talking about.
Not guests, they're family.
We could say that, right? Yeah, absolutely. But before we get to that, you had a big shindig last night.
Indeed.
You need to share.
Yes.
If you're not going to brag on you, I got to make you brag.
I know
on you,
it's lovely to have my two dads here, if you will, child of the 80s, obviously. No, I do need to certainly shout out the Journal Record for recognizing me last night at the Woman of the Year ceremony. I was one of the many nominees or honorees, as the proper terminology for that. It was a really lovely ceremony, and James Bennett, the editor-in-chief, also recognized me in the top 25 power list in education, alongside some really great and influential folks. So the Journal Record has been very lovely to me in 2024. So I appreciate their support.
Well, it is very well deserved.
Wow, thank you.
So
Stop. I don't do this.
Your reputation continues to
precede me.
Grow and grow and grow.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So. We try. Well, thank you. That's enough shameless plugging. I'm done now.
Before we do anything else, we also want to plug. We have a very interesting panel discussion coming up on October 24th at 11 a.m. on Rose State at our Community Learning Center, right?
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about the initiative petition that will be on the ballot in 2026 about increasing the minimum wage. And we've got some great folks that are going to be on that panel. Dr. Travis Roach from UCO, Dr. Samantha Samantha Johnson from OU, Gabriela Perez Ramirez.
Yes.
Is that right?
Oklahoma Policy.
From Oklahoma Policy is going to be on there.
And then our own illustrious James Davenport.
Somehow I weaseled my way onto that discussion too. Right?
Yes, weaseled.
But it's going to be a good discussion. I think we're going to be very informative.
It'll be great. And then, of course, Sue Sasser is taking my place for that discussion, because I will be on my second whirlwind trip to Austin Community College in 2 weeks. Which is an amazing community college. It's gorgeous. Yeah. I'm very excited.
It's very impressive. So if you're interested in that, you need to come on out. We would love to have you.
We'll post a link to
That's right. And are we live streaming that? Do we know?
Sure. I don't know. I'm not going to be here.
Okay. I'll talk to somebody about that.
Yes, we'll figure it out.
Yes. All right. Enough about that. We're here. This is our Oklahoma Political Science Association preview of their annual conference, right? And we have two great guests in the house, Dr. Shanna Padgham from Oklahoma City Community College, and Dr. Brett Sharp from the University of Central Oklahoma, returning to give us a rundown on all things OPSA, all things politics. And Dr. Padgham, re-listened to the last time she and Dr. Sharp were on, I understand, and made some notes. You want to talk about that? You want to share?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. It is so nice to be back. I will say that last time we came under the pretense that we were just going to come and just talk about our conference, which I'm sure we'll do that maybe towards the end. And I just thought we would just listen to you all talk the whole time. So
that sounds awful. That's definitely not what
I was here
happening.
for it. And then it turned out that we talked so much. And so now I'm prepared this time for whatever discussion you guys might lead us into. But I tried to be the student. I try to encourage my students to be. And I just thought it'd be fun to just listen back to the previous episode. And so if you're listening to this, you should listen to the previous episode because it was fun. But how times have changed. And so I made some notes on just things that were on our minds at the time and things that, a year is a really long time to separate us from then. And so we had just gotten Mike Johnson as the speaker. And we had a lot of discussion about all that went into that. The number of times we said the Gates 8 at that time. And like, how many times do you think you've said that since then? Probably not very many, but that was really at the front of our minds at the time. It was before the primaries. And so we were talking about, that nobody wants a Trump-Biden, election, but we were predicting that it was inevitable and that all polling was leading that way. And we were correct about that. But what was also very interesting was our dialogue about how we had thought that the Biden administration was going to prop up Kamala more and that, we thought Biden would maybe be a single-term president, but it wasn't looking like that, and how they had really sidelined Kamala. And wow, boy, could we have not predicted what would happen during the summer, and how some of our previous notions ended up kind of being correct, but most certainly not down the route that we had thought they were going to be. And so poor naive previous us. That's why we should not be in the predictions game, even if we study this for a living. We too have no idea what's going on. Let's see. We also had concerns about the Democrats even having enough support around her, and that there were factions of the Democrats that just were never going to support Kamala. But I
still second that. I still stand by that.
But we have seen that there were no other serious contenders. They really did get behind her, and that she became the party nominee very, very quickly. There wasn't, an open convention or anything. We were just kind of only a couple weeks into the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I don't think we could have even began to predict that we'd be here a year later in what is all unfolded, and even the partisan lines that have been drawn in that. It was just so fresh and new. And we were really quite concerned that our attention had been deviated from Ukraine on that topic, which is still true, but it was just so early on. And so thinking about, to use Emily's words, poor baby us at the time. We were just babies at the time. And also we were thinking that Georgia's indictments or pending indictments were like Trump's biggest problems. And we did not have the forethought to think about that he would actually be convicted in New York. And so, and Georgia has been much less of a conversation, if any at all, in present day. And then just Matt Gaetz in general was just much more on our radar. And I haven't really spent much time at all thinking about Matt Gaetz. So anyway, that's just kind of my rundown of things that we just could not imagine. This is also why we get new textbooks every 2 years in American government courses, because so much of government changes constantly. And so we need to have more up-to-date materials. So
Shanna's like the political science police. Anything you say may be used against you.
That's true. I actually declined an interview this morning because I was like, don't think I want that in print. I do not.
But so much has happened. Let's just start with the presidential election for a second, right? I think what Democrats showed in kind of this unifying around Kamala is they really want to win. Yeah. And they didn't want to damage themselves. And so a lot of those folks who either might have wanted to get in or who weren't all that excited about Vice President Harris said, we're going to bite the bullet because we really want to win. And so that's the coalescing that you got there.
Well, and Biden was so unpopular. And after the debate,
The debate was such a debacle.
It was such a mess to say, like, you better get a strategy or Trump is 100% going to win this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
And it's interesting to me, on the flip side of that, Trump's campaign seemed completely caught flat-footed when they moved to, and you would have thought after that debate, you would have thought the first thing they'd be doing, okay, who's the likely candidate? And Harris had to be at the top of that. And they acted like they were not prepared at all.
They weren't prepared at all. I don't think that I think that his campaign apparatus really believed, like a lot of the Democratic establishment, right? It took Nancy Pelosi, it took everybody, right? It took moving the mountain, right? To get Joe Biden off that ticket, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have waited as long as he did. And so I think that Trump and his campaign were probably right in not preparing other threats, because Trump was already going to be very risky about talking about Kamala Harris. So why start that conversation before you have to, right? Yeah. He was going to be alienating about her and has been. And so I think their campaign was probably smart to not start that rhetoric any time before they needed to.
But you would think that they would have, like, I don't know, I've never been on a presidential campaign or anything, but plans like A through G of like scenarios, what if scenarios. And maybe I'm just giving people too much credit for planning for these things.
This is what I would have thought.
I mean,
yeah.
Well, Trump is not known for following his campaign advisors, what their strategies might be. And, for weeks afterwards, I think he was psychologically still in the zone that Biden was going to be his opponent.
He kept attacking him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This goes back to Biden isn't the only one that has cognitive issues, I think, a little bit in this.
Well, I have to say, among my colleagues, I've tend to lean left. I was pretty much unpopular for suggesting that Biden was too old, even though in the same breath, and I still do, I think Trump's too old. You get up there in age and you realize, there are things, there are things that come along like wisdom. I get that. I'm still reeling from the fact that Biden did so well in the State of the Union address. It was spontaneous. He did ad libs. He played back and forth, I think, successfully with the Republican members who were outspoken during that time. And to see that performance, if you will, compared to the debate, it's like, what is this? So anyway, and then I thought the contrast was pretty stark between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in that second presidential debate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, it goes back to the underlying theme of this show. When you have the electorate that is made up predominantly of the millennial generation and Gen Z, as much as James Davenport doesn't like to hear it, we need to start thinking about finding candidates and recruiting candidates that are at least Gen X. Good Lord, people.
I'd be down for that.
The further you get the wisdom correct, it comes, but also the further you get from things like metadata and API and things that are going on that you're having to legislate, but also having to educate yourself on as you're trying to regulate it. I think that's dangerous, and it's been extraordinarily dangerous in the 21st century. That's why we don't have regulation of your social media companies currently, right? It took until 2016 and the election being threatened. And we're like, oh my God, right? This data can be used against me and to change elections. Now we need to regulate it. It's a problem. It's a problem.
Well, as to the generations, I do find great comfort in everybody referring to Kamala Harris as being young. And she's my age.
Yes. So. Absolutely. Cheers to you.
It's a relative term, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least she knows what social media is.
Right. On the flip side of that, we've talked about this before too, which is with younger members of Congress, we're seeing less of an emphasis on having a legislative staff that can actually move legislation through the process, and much more of an emphasis on having a communication staff that can build up social media cred, right? And so where's the balance? How do we get these younger folks who will bring talent and who will bring a connection to what's going on right now, but also to have them invest in the heavy lifting of getting stuff done.
Governance?
Right? Yes, right. And that seems to be the challenge right now that we see is that these. So you've got the older crowd who they know how to get stuff done, but they're much more disconnected from modern life in a variety of ways. And then you have the crowd that is much more connected to modern life, but they don't have the experience, or in some cases, even it seems the interest in actually getting things done. Yeah,
right.
No, that's right.
Temperament, especially this week, I think, for, folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene who believe that the government controls our weather and can direct it at certain human beings. It's incredible.
I just don't understand. I do understand.
Sorry, I wanted to poke James on that.
How do people like that get elected? I mean, what is going on?
But ask the good people of Georgia. I guess
we have.
I know the answer. Listen, I know the answer to that.
Here and everything's fine.
I know the answer to that.
I'd like to hear the answer.
It's gerrymandering, right? I mean, you create districts in which they're pumped with, one party is overwhelming, going to be the winner. And then to appeal to that party, you got to appeal to the more radical or fringe elements to get through that primary, right? Exactly. And so we get folks like that.
Yeah. So that's a nice pivot. I want to ask, have the other two doctors seen Pat McFerrin's polling in Oklahoma County? Do you want to summarize that really quickly?
Well, no.
Let's get their opinion.
So McFerrin is saying that Harris may actually win Oklahoma County in the presidential election.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, it's an urban area. You had Kendra Horn win the congressional district. Not the last time, but the time before that. So, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. We haven't had
Austin in Texas.
I'm trying to remember the last election that a county went for a Democrat. And it may have been 2000.
No.
I don't think. No,
it was in 08?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I think it was 2000.
Was it 2000?
I
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
That wasn't all 77, maybe. You guys don't have like a live fact checker here?
We're working on that. Yeah, the budget isn't quite there yet for that.
That seems reasonable to be 2000, but that would be.
But the state hasn't went for a Democrat.
The news is already writing itself on what Oklahoma County which is just really remarkable because to Dr. Sharp's point, like this is an urban county. It really has all the conditions that would make it the county that actually goes blue. But even then, in Oklahoma, where all of our faces are like, "Oh, I'm not sure. We'll see."
Well, I think purple is a better. Yeah, I don't know that we could call it blue,
maroon. Even purple is. I refer to it as maroon. Yeah.
But yes, you're exactly right. It is the type of urban area.
So does that help down ballot, you think? Does that help Madison Horn?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
I just, because you can win Oklahoma County, as we saw in like the governor's election and I think even the superintendent's election, right? Where both the Republicans who won lost Oklahoma County. So you can still, and it's just...
We've seen a continued increase in voter registration.
Very much so.
Even.
Yeah, but not for Democrats, apparently. So Democrats lost, I think I saw from the election board, about 211,000 voters between 2000.
Was it like 40,000 more Republican voters in the fifth district?
Yeah. So, they kind of gerrymandered that too, right? So they brought in some voters from what was the third district, which again, I find this so amusing. It's basically absent kind of the east side of the fifth district now, but the Oklahoma County portion of the district is basically the same as it was pre-2000.
Yeah.
When the Democrats had brought the third district all the way into downtown Oklahoma City.
Yep.
And then, Republicans, when they redistricted after 2000, changed that. And now they put it back in. And so both sides, whenever the other side did it, were gerrymandering. This is awful. This is horrible. And it's like, you both did the exact same thing. So I found that interesting. But yeah, that's exactly why they did it, is to bring some more rural Republican voters in.
Gotta trench that maroonness.
Right. They're gonna stave off that flip as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some state politics. Surely you guys are paying attention to stuff going on here. What are your thoughts about anything that stands out to you that you want to dive into?
Well, I think that you pointed it out that there's not it's not as, exciting and interesting as it has been in the past. There's a lot of uncontested races. There's a lot, it feels like so much is a foregone conclusion, which is hard for me to say because I always say that I'm like an optimist for a political scientist, but I'm also, I guess, like the numbers are the numbers too, though. And it's just, there's not a whole lot of accountability. Yesterday I was encouraged. I was at I'm in Leadership OKC this year, and I would like to put a shout out that we are the best class ever. So anyone hearing this, that is our that's us, class 42. But anyway, we were talking about public safety, and we were talking about like how the Oklahoma County jail is funded, and that Oklahoma County is the only county in Oklahoma that doesn't have a sales tax funding public safety. And, in that room, it was like, what do we do about this? This is a lot of really smart people all sitting in a room that are pretty well connected. What do we need to do about this? But also it was like, we're feeling kind of stumped. And also, even if you were able to get a ballot measure, would people turn out to vote for something that if all Oklahomans sat in the room that we were in yesterday and heard the problems, it'd be, oh, yeah, like we should do more to fund public safety. There's a lot of issues that come along with this. And most rational people would agree on these things. But most people don't get the benefit of sitting in a room for an entire day hearing from experts about like, here are logistical issues that are going on. And so when we go back to, state politics and how elections are going to turn out, people don't have access, number one, to the kind of information that we benefit from and have, the benefit of our jobs being part of this.
Rationality seems quite elusive in modern politics.
Yes, true. Absolutely.
What?
Which is hard. It's hard to compete with, just basic, fundamental, oftentimes boring facts with what a meme will tell you on social media.
Yes.
And so if even in that room had a diversity of political opinions, I'm sure, but most people sitting there could seem like, well, yeah, we ought to do something about this. But even then to see election outcomes that are something that most of us genuinely want is just so unlikely. And what do we do about that? And I think that feeling of helplessness is really frustrating. And it also makes people become even more disengaged. This is too high of a mountain to climb. I've got kids to raise and things to do and other things that don't depress me. So I'm going to pursue that. And then we kind of perpetuate this cycle and don't even get mad about gerrymandering, even though most people would say you're rigging the game before we even get started here. So
we just need more political scientists to run for office. That would solve the problem.
Philosophers should be kings.
There you go. Right.
How often are you asked, do you consider running for office?
Never. I have never.
You've never been. No, have you ever been asked that, like from students or friends or whatever? Like, well, you study this. Do you ever think about running for office?
As the one person who has run for office, my students love my story, and
everybody love your story, James?
Well, I don't know. I don't. It's like pulling a scab every time you tell it, but they always ask at the end of me hearing that, because when I'm teaching on campaigns and elections, I give them that story, and they always say, well, would you ever run for office again? And I'm like, I don't think so. That's enough for me.
He would too.
Well, given the circumstances, I might, right?
Yeah,
I might.
That.
But my problem is I don't fit anywhere right now. And so that would be hard to overcome. Independents don't have a great track record. And I just don't see how it would work. But
have you recovered from, or has the Libertarian Party recovered from their mild, lukewarm endorsement of Trump?
No, they have not. Okay. And I have not done so yet.
Still got beef.
I can't. I have until today. All right, I could change my registration today,
now,
and still be able to vote. Yes, so. Sir. Maybe I'll do that when I get to the office. We'll see.
All right. I love a good.
Will this be published today?
What's that?
This podcast episode?
Not today.
Okay. So there's no point in, if you're listening to this, your time has passed.
Yeah.
To register to vote.
If you did not register by October 11th, you will not be able to vote in the election on November. So that is correct.
Indeed.
What else? What policies at the state or local level? I like the idea about the public safety. I think, again, some of this is so boring. The public gets bored with it. I mean, you're dealing with facts and figures.
Oh, no, it's politics, the way it should be done.
And you can't, it's hard to make a meme that encapsulates what you want. It's a lot easier to say, back the blue or defund the police. That's easy. Right. But something in the middle there.
Quite entertained and interested and horrified by Ryan Walters and Bibles in the Classroom. And, this is a guy who, did religious studies as a minor in college. So, I read a lot of Bible as part of that. So I can sort of see it used as a historical document, a cultural document, and approached in a secular way. But, the parameters of what they want turns out to be the Chinese produced Trump Bible. So really, I mean, I swear a lot of this is just to put things in your face for people who would normally find that inappropriate in so many ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of what he does is grandstanding, getting attention. He clearly is not interested in actually doing the requirements of the office. That seems boring to him. That's that governing thing, right?
Exactly.
That seems boring to him, but any chance he can to kind of stick it to the libs, right? Exactly. And to poke people in the eye and get away with it, right?
And maybe get rewarded for it. We'll see.
Well, because the more outrageous the thing, and it has to be outrageous. It has to be, not only do we want to put Bibles in the classroom, but we also want them to be a specific Bible, is a great way to be in the news. And you've probably seen this all over your social media. And now we're talking about it right now. And so
we're suckers.
Success.
We're playing his game now.
Well, we've had this conversation with some reporters about that very fact, right? Is that he does this so they will... And he puts everybody in this position of, do we talk about it? Do we not talk about it?
It made it to the Washington Post. I mean, it's been national all week.
Right. And so he's clearly going to run for governor. I don't think there's any question about that.
I just don't know who is backing him, especially when you have a Drummond, and we've heard other names, but Drummond certainly is running for governor.
Drummond's going to run.
I can't imagine
really think
how.
McCall is going to run.
I agree with that assessment.
Well, Drummond would have a lot of crossover appeal.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
but that doesn't mean he's going to get through the primary.
That might actually hurt him in a Republican primary.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
And remember, in a primary where you might have 4 or 5 candidates, you don't need a majority to get into the runoff, right? Yeah. And so if Walters cobbles together a bunch of rural voters who really are buying into his message of socialism is run rampant in education.
One election before you pontificate on the next awful election?
Well, this one's much more interesting, in my opinion, right? It's going to be an open seat for the governor's race.
I had heard.
Are the Democrats going to have to steal another Republican to have a candidate that is competitive? I think that's...
Who else?
Leslie Osborne, maybe?
Oh, no, I agree. I think she would. Yeah, absolutely.
But again, I don't know.
I agree with you. I'm not sure where he's going to land.
Well, I'd heard that Drummond might pull like a Joy Hoffmeister and run on the Democratic ticket.
He could, and that might be a path, because I think he would, in a general election, pull some Republicans.
Yeah.
Some of the Republicans who are definitely tired of the Walters show, and those that maybe not have been so excited about Stitt. I think he would pull some of those Republicans.
Do you think if this happens that it would push the Republicans to open their primary finally?
I don't know about that. No. I think there's just no incentive for them to do that. I mean, they've got the registration numbers alone. They're not incentivized to do that. So it's hard. We've had this conversation before. I'm not a big fan of open primaries to begin with.
I'm not either. But I'm glad that Democrats have an open primary because as an independent,
You can vote.
I can vote.
Yeah, right.
I only like open primaries when they're convenient for me, but
That's true. But I mean, it makes no sense to me. Closed primary, you should hold the party accountable. And if it's an open primary, you can always make the claim that, well, other people who are not members of this party have influenced the outcome. And I understand logically why the Democratic Party would have an open primary. That just makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have real strong evidence that open primaries produce higher quality officials at this point, right? And I know that California, so one of the arguments is, well, it could bring in more competition, but if you look at California's open primary, Democrats still run away with that. I mean, it's always the Democrats in the top two that end up in the general election. So I don't know that open primaries have all that promise. Now, I do like, and Emily and I have talked about this before, the idea of ranked choice voting.
All solutions lead to ranked choice voting.
And I admit, some of the criticism, well, it's complicated. It's a bit more complicated than what we do now, but I really do think that would have the potential of leading to more moderate candidates of all stripes who were more serious about getting things done and who more reflected the voters in their districts. So,
well, maybe it'd improve turnout too, though, because so many people rightfully think if I'm anything but a pretty extreme Republican, it's just a giant waste of time to turn out to vote. And they're not wrong, especially if the cost of voting is pretty high for them. And so if it really does feel like, well, this is going to be impactful in some way, and that, then I would like to think it would improve turnout. And it's just one of those things that we are like so embarrassingly low on the national level, like the national charts ranking. And so maybe that could be an improvement. But procedurally, why would anyone who has the power to influence whether or not we have open primaries or ranked choice voting, why would you vote for something that is a strategy that could potentially hurt you?
That will only come through like an initiative petition or something like that, right? We're not going to be able to rely upon the majority at this point who is so firmly entrenched doing anything that would undermine their position. Now, I will say there's one time when I would be in favor of an open primary, and that is when there's no opponent going to be in the general election. Yeah, at that point, I would say, okay, let's open up the primary, because otherwise there are a bunch of voters who just are not going to have a chance to weigh in on who will represent them. So I would be for, in a situation where we know that whoever wins the primary is going to win the election, let's open that up.
But then do you put in like pawn people to run on a different ticket, or the Democrat ticket or something, just so there is an opponent? Or
I'm sure
the games we play in politics.
We play these games all the time, right? There's accusations that in open primaries that happens too, where voters of one party will move into the other party's primary to try to push in the weaker, who they think might be the weaker candidate in the general election or whatnot. So you're never going to get away from that, I don't think. But well, let's talk about OPSA and what do we think of what's going on there. So, Emily, you are the conference chair this year, right? Coordinator.
Why do we have to start with me? He's the president.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, what I would do directly is refer it to you.
He's so good.
Conference chair.
Yes.
Delegation.
All right. I'm excited to be hosting this year's conference at Rose State College in our beautiful student union, which I lovingly refer to as the Glass Menagerie. It's absolutely fantastic. We've got a great agenda so far. I know to some folks' chagrin, it is multi-panels. There are multiple panels going on at one time. However, we had so much stuff going on in the year 2024 that we didn't want to kind of miss out on anything. So we're going to, of course, start off with our student poster presentations, where we are giving our students across the metro area, largely it's the three of us, UCO, OPSA, and Rose State, that have contributed students. We have forced our students to present posters at OPSA for the past 3 years under Dr. Padgham's initial direction, which was a brilliant idea, and really re-engaging the students into the conference. And so that's been a real cornerstone of things for the last 3 years. And then some electoral panels. Obviously, we've got some paper submission panels too at this point. I'll tell you the story of the second one in a little bit. Some wonderful reviews of SCOTUS. If you liked, I've gotten really wonderful reviews of our last podcast with Akins. And so if you were a fan of that episode, just kind of going over SCOTUS's last term, he will be presenting on doing a roundtable on the last Supreme Court term, as well as one on the administrative state after the Chevron decision. So please consider that. I'm doing one on civic engagement and, of course, my standing media panel, because you know me, I love a good media panel. It's a good way to get all the homies from the Capitol Press Corps back together. So we love that one. An OL demonstration, you know, the usual, the drill. Dr. Padgham will be hosting a women in politics panel, which she has recruited me to do this morning, which was questionable on my behalf, but I suppose I'll sit there and look pretty. Professor Davenport, James is doing some pretty controversial ones that I told him, okay, that's fine. You can do these panels, sir.
Wait,
but
am I on one of the controversial ones?
No,
okay,
you're on
I would like to rescind my...
That's going to be an easy one.
I don't know. Okay. Anyway, so James has chosen to tackle free speech and viewpoint diversity in political science. That panel will be on Thursday at 4:40. And then we needed to split it up a little bit. So we're going to have two controversial days of James. Then his second panel is diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory.
That's right.
And then a third, the marriage, family, and public policy panel as well. And then, of course, I have Dr. Sharp. I've recruited poor Dr. Sharp to host our legislator panel on Friday morning as well. So I believe I've got Mickey Dollins, Representative Dollins coming in. I've not heard back from Rep. Fugate, but he's usually everywhere with us. So, and then Senator Pugh for sure will be there, right? The homies, right? The homies. So it'll be a really great conference. Dr. Rick Moore is putting together another politics power player panel. That's a lot of alliteration there. We love Rick Moore. And so he has been a mainstay in Oklahoma politics for, I don't know, I don't want to give him some age, but like at least 40 years. He's been around and knows everybody literally at the state capitol and beyond. So he is very adept and can bring his friends together. And so he is going to do that for us. And at this point, we have confirmed Senator Kay Floyd, because we asked for some more gender diversity this year on the power player panel. So Senator Floyd is our confirmed panelist there, but we have some others in the works that will be very exciting. So there's something for everybody. Please stay tuned. We will post a link to register. Jonathan Rausch, obviously Brookings Institute fellow, has been on the podcast a couple of times and at Rose State College as well. And Atlantic author, words are failing me at the moment. You just put he was going to be our keynote on Thursday. So it'll be a great conference. So please plan on being there. That's Thursday, November 7th and Friday, November 8th at Rose State College. Registration will begin at 8 a.m. on Thursday, November 7th. But again, we will post the registration link for you guys so that you may find it. And it's up on Rose State College website right now. How did I do, President?
You did great. I'm so impressed. You represented the organization well. I do want to be put on the record that I am the world's greatest fan of Jonathan Rausch, and I'm thrilled that you're bringing him back again. And I do want to say that, you know, for the last couple of decades, OPSA as an organization has strategically placed the start of the conference the Thursday after the Tuesday election day. And so this year especially, it's going to be a day of celebration for some and therapy for others. And no matter how it turns out, so it'll something I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, it's always a good time to have all of us in one place after the election, just like
trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good time.
My first conference was 2016, and I just saw some really prominent political scientists not quite able to form words 2 days after the election, just being truly stunned by the outcome. But it was nice to be with colleagues and to try to unpack all of that together. And it really is a wonderful conference. Dr. Stacey has done such a good job. She, says that others are so well connected, but she is very well connected and knows how to ask people to come and be part of this. And, you don't have to be a political scientist to come. You don't have to be a specific stakeholder. It's a great place to try to make sense of so many political issues in a really friendly environment. I'm sure we've all been to a conference before that you're like, everyone's kind of angry here. And ours is not like that at all. It really is informative. It's such a variety of topics, from the Supreme Court to legislators to, well, I don't know, there might be a couple people mad in yours, James, but we'll see what
happens. Listen,
happens.
And it has to be
I
on my
tackle these because nobody else is going to.
He does the hard work.
Right. No,
Listen to this man.
We need to have honest,
discussion,
informed discussions of these things outside of what we see out there, right? I mean, that's what we do. That's what we bring to the table is a set of tools as political scientists to dig into this stuff. And that panel on the CRT and DIA is going to be a little bit different than most of these roundtables, because I've already informed all of them that I'm going to start off laying out an argument, and then my expectation is that they're going to respond to that argument. And so,
like your own little debate.
This will be great.
It won't necessarily be a debate, but it'll be a discussion for sure, right?
Who do you have on this panel?
So one of our colleagues, Professor Tuesday Pelt Willis, is going to be on there. Professor John Wood is going to be on there. He and Dr. Kickham a couple of years ago did a little bit of research on this, and so I invited him to join that one. Who else do I have on there?
Sorry to put
maybe
you on the
Dr. He used to be at ECU, Ananga.
Oh, yeah.
He's out in Florida now.
Eric Ananga. Wow.
And I contacted him. I did not know he was in Florida. And apparently his ECU email still works because I emailed him and he said, well, I'm in Florida, but that sounds like something I'd like to do. So he's going to get back with me and see if he can be there. And I'm not sure who, I've got one or two that I'm kind of waiting on. And then I have one person from the medical community, I think, who's going to be on there.
Interesting.
Reynolds, I think is his last name. I'll have to go back and see. So, but I tried to get diverse voices,
great panels, yes.
People who are going to come at this from different angles. And I always come from this from someplace out of left field, it seems, not where everybody else seems to go. But just to give you a little preview, my basic argument is nobody's talking about either of these things entirely accurately. And I feel like we as a discipline have not deployed the tools that we have to investigate these things as seriously and substantively as we should. And so that's basically what I'm going to be arguing. And so we'll see what happens. But I think it'll be an interesting discussion. I'm looking forward to it. I'm not afraid. I've had panels before where the panelists were like, James, you're out of your mind. I'm okay with that. Emily tells me that fairly regularly. So
with love.
But having some kind of discussion in which we actually say, as political scientists, how should we look at these things? And how should we verify or validate any kind of claims? And that's my basic complaint.
I appreciate this part about you, James, because really I do. As you, demographically speaking, as an average American male, you don't shy away from the things that others may not want to speak about in public, and that's why I think I love you so much. Right? I think that's why we work so well together, is because you are very honest in your investigations. It's you don't ever come from things decidedly. You come at it from an open inquiry, and I appreciate that about you. So I give you crap about them being controversial because I wouldn't touch them as a brown lady, teaching political science in Oklahoma. But I'm very glad to have a colleague that can and does.
Well, let me just say, we'll put this out. I'm kind of using my privilege to do this, right? I can, and I don't have to. By and large, where I'm secure in where I'm at. I have enough of a reputation with our institution and my colleagues that they know if I'm going to put on something like this, it's not going to be a rant and rave and just, fire breathing kind of stuff. And And I'm going to give everybody who's going to be on there the opportunity to say what they're, and treat them with respect, right? Treat that argument, whatever they have to say, with respect. And I think that's what we don't get outside here, but that's what we as political scientists should be about.
Absolutely.
I hope that's not too much pontificating on that, but
No.
We're paid to pontificate.
That's right.
occasionally, right? Occasionally. But yeah, I'm excited about OPSA. I think you guys have a great program. There's going to be, I'm sitting there going, man, I wish I could go to that one, but I'm going to be over here instead or whatnot.
And Rose State is such a great location. It's so accessible, to everybody in the state.
We like our campus.
And we're going to be mostly in
The Union.
Yeah, right?
All in the
That's
Union.
going to be great.
All on the second floor.
That's going to be awesome. So anything else we want to just banter about? What's going on in your world or your world? What's new?
I've had so much experience with the justice.
Oh, really? Do tell.
Dr.
I've
Padgham,
been
you're
a
right.
I saw, sorry to
go
interrupt,
ahead.
but I saw that you had the opportunity to do a ride along
I
with
did.
it. So tell us about that.
It was, so they had multiple shifts, as they do. And I'm not made for staying up all night long. I'm sure the adrenaline would have been enough, but I was like, I'm more of get there at 6:45 in the morning kind of gal. And so I had made the joke that I was like, we're going to get all the jaywalkers in the city during my time during the day. And no, I was wrong. There were lots of things going on. And it was an incredible experience. I learned that anybody can do a ride along. I didn't know if it was like a special permission through the organization, but they said no, which speaks to transparency and saying, if you want to see what we do, you get to ride in the front seat of our car with us. And so know that you can do that too if you want to. You should. It was so interesting. We were out of the Hefner division, but you got to pick any of the 4 divisions and just learning about the number of times we drove past the Target on the Northwest Expressway, because there's just like that routine over and over again. But
That's funny.
it's a 10-hour shift. They work Wednesday to Wednesday. So that's a lot. And that my officer, it was really neat to work with a female officer. I got to ask her some questions about what it's like to, be in that role. Do people respect her the same way? Does she feel and all this? But she did not stop for a minute. It was, we are pulling somebody over or we are getting a call over here, and to learn the vast system that they use to put people on calls, the mapping, the software that they use, all that. But I mean, she'd say, okay, well, we're not on a call right now, so let's go and look for stolen cars. And they have this really cool technology that reads license plates. And I had assumed there was like a 1 in 20 chance you'd get your car back if it got stolen. No, those license plates are being scanned constantly. You have a really high probability. I mean, I would lock your car still, but the fact that then they're so proactive about that, and just she stayed busy that entire 10 hours and just learning about what our Oklahoma City Police Department is doing and how refined it is was, for an organization that does get put in the media a lot and you only hear the bad stories, you don't get to hear the stories where they're using discretion in a way where they really are thinking about the person that they're pulling over, and they're considering, what's this impact on this person's life or can I talk to them about this and explain to them what they need to do and not take them to the Oklahoma County Jail, also knowing the status of the Oklahoma County Jail. And I didn't have any bad feelings about the Oklahoma City Police Department. I'm fortunate I didn't have a lot of run-ins with them. But I walked away with a lot of admiration. And then, so that was last Friday. And then I got jury duty in Logan County the following Monday. So I got to spend a lot of time in the Logan County Courthouse just to check all the people in, only to find out they only needed like 24 people for juries.
So you didn't actually get to sit on the jury?
No, I won't be sitting on a jury.
Yeah,
and so, and I was like, for what it's worth, I would find this tremendously interesting.
Yeah, me too.
And I told, people, you tell them, oh, you've been called up for jury duty. Oh, I don't want to do jury. Nobody wants to do jury duty. But I need you to understand that if you were accused of something, and of course you're innocent, because of course you're innocent, would you want your jury to be made up of people who had nothing better to do? So while it is inconvenient, you want people who are thoughtful and do have other things to do, but are doing their civic duty to sit on these juries. But it is helpful that I'm not on this jury because I've got conferences to attend with my colleagues here, and it's an election year, and canceling classes, there's no substitute. And there's nobody to call in and substitute for you. So the timing works out. But I've just been, and then like the whole public service day yesterday with Leadership OKC, I got in one of those, the ladder that goes up 100 feet in the air. And so I sprayed a fire hose yesterday. That thing has power. So I've just been very involved in all of the public safety stuff for the last week. So it's been cool. And I'm very encouraged by what our city is doing, how money is being spent in leadership, and how they seem to be really doing things for the right reasons. And so
when I worked for the city of Oklahoma City, as employment manager in human resources, and we did the police promotionals, and I really came away very impressed with that department in particular. It's just so well run.
Mm-hmm.
I think so many people don't know what the average police officer does in a day, right? And they only see what they see on TV, which is never really that positive of an interaction, right, with the public. And
that doesn't sell. Like, who wants to watch, like, well, you're going 6 over, but we're going to give you a warning this time. You want to see people have horrible experiences because that's just how we are.
I have a question for you on relating to the justice system and talking about juries, right? I've often wondered, should we just have professional jurors?
Ooh, I've never heard of that.
Where we just hire people and that's your job, is to sit on juries and hear cases. And
you make them basically a group set of judges.
But I'm like, well, I mean,
judges.
like, if you think about people that, like, their whole job is to just interpret the law, and even perhaps our highest courts, and people are people, and their judgment just isn't always sound, and their partisan beliefs are going to come into play, and they study their whole lives to do that. I'm concerned at the lower levels to have thousands and thousands of people who think that they're doing that, but we're just people. What you had for lunch can impact your decision making. Sometimes I'll be grading papers and I'm like, I need to have a cup of coffee before I continue this.
Well, the average person, right? You see somebody, they're accused of something, they throw up their mugshot, which is never a good picture. And it's like, I can tell they're guilty because of how they look in that mugshot, right? Those are people who are sitting on juries.
Right.
I'm just wondering, would outcomes be, would outcomes be different? And would you have a more engaged person on the jury who is more interested in being there?
Yeah. And like maybe have them do like implicit bias training, have them do things that like an average juror is just not going to get. And so if you could formalize it, maybe this is an interesting thought experiment. You should do a panel at OPSA one day on just
what? I've got an idea.
Don't have any more tracks.
It's 2025's problem.
Stop it.
I've already got an idea for 2025, right? Yeah. No, that would be interesting. We could get maybe some attorneys on, some defense attorneys and prosecutors.
I do want to push back on you on the mugshot business because I have a PowerPoint presentation in my American National Government when I cover the presidency. And I put both the official portrait picture of Donald Trump up there. And you will look at him. He looks grim and determined. And then you get his mugshot. It looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Oh, this reminds me. I don't know if any of you have heard anything about this yet. I heard, not through a source that I would say I would reliably count, but
my favorite things come after that statement.
Right?
I read in the headlines.
Right?
He's got a way of setting things up.
But I heard that Trump's conviction was being heard by a New York appellate court earlier this week or late last week, and that the judges on that appellate court were giving the prosecutors a really hard time about that. And I have not heard this in any what I would consider more credible places. So I don't know if any of you have heard anything about, all right, I've got a Google search to go do, right? So to find out if that is what I saw was credible or not. But just throwing that out there to see what you guys might have heard.
Hey, I've got some fodder. NBC News just put out some interesting stats. So on mail-in voting, so far in the United States total, there have been roughly almost, let's average, we'll round up, 34 million mail-in and early in-person votes requested nationally, and around 3.7 million that have been actually cast. So demographically, they've broken down by age and gender, which makes me really happy. So I find it interesting. So you've got obviously 38% being the largest proportion of 65 and older. So of course we expect that. 50 to 64 is the next at 23%. But what is interesting at 14%, and third is 30 to 39. And that is 1% more than 40 to 49. So I thought that was a little bit interesting. Of course, it's only a percentage apart, but nonetheless, if the trends continue, that means that my generation is failing yet again. My part of the generation is failing yet again. Thanks, elder millennials. Good for you people. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was good. Interesting.
Could they tell party breakdown?
Yep.
What was the party breakdown?
In fact, they have it by state even. So right now, the majority of mail-ins and early votes are Democrats, 47% registered Democrats, 28% Republican, and 25% other. And then in Oklahoma, of course, going to be of course Republicans, just by
the numbers are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff. I love an infographic, man, on the election. We love communication that goes both ways, not just you listening to us pontificate. We would love to hear from our audience. If you have comments, suggestions, or would like to contact us about possibly being a guest on the show, please email notmygeneration@raider.rose.edu.
All right, so let's get some predictions before we get out of here.
Oh boy!
All right,
so then we can go correct ourselves in a year.
Next
from
year
now.
we can come back.
Boy,
right?
were we silly?
So presidential election. What's going to be the outcome? Let's start with who's going to win the popular vote.
Me puking on the floor is going to be the outcome.
Who's going to win the popular vote in the election?
I'll come in on a limb and say the popular vote would be Kamala Harris.
Okay, I think that's right.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Now,
probably popular vote, yeah.
Electoral count.
This makes me nervous. I don't like this.
I would be bold and give you a prediction on that one, but I know Shanna's going to come back and
hold it against you.
He's a big fact checker, year after the fact.
Yeah, the year after the fact checker. That is my role.
That is funny.
I am going to go. I think there's no good way of predicting this, but I'm going to go with Harris with a slight, like somewhere between 270 and 285 is what I think is good. That's my prediction.
My prediction is the other side.
The other side, the same.
Vice versa, yeah.
And I will tell you, either way it's
going to be close.
It's going to be close, and it's not going to be good because the other side is going to be spitting fire.
Especially if it's 270. Like, here come all the, it was rigged. It was only a matter of a single state or, down to the county level. Oh, my gosh. That would be another Bush v. Gore situation on our hands if it was that close. Because it needs to, I would say it needs to be decisively, but that didn't matter in 2020. So, like, that's the optimist in me that's like, they're there, Shanna. They're there.
Right. But you got to come on, I can't be the only one who makes the prediction.
Yes, Ms. Nostradamus.
I didn't say Nostradamus. I was just reflective on what we were wrong about. Oh, man. Well, because I was listening to the daily, I think it was from yesterday, talking about like the impact of the hurricanes, which, for 2025 selves, these hurricanes are a really big deal and they're impacting like the ability of people to physically get to a voting place. And if your house is underwater, your priority is not election day. And is your precinct even there anymore? And do they have the logistical ability to even erect another? I mean, people are going to be voting in tents or something. Like what's going to happen there? So I don't know that I have an electoral vote, but I think Kamala's going to win.
Okay. All right.
So we'll see.
All right.
Am I the lone wolf? I already said Trump.
You did say Trump, right? So
you said popular vote for Kamala.
Oh yeah, I ducked the Electoral College vote on
Yeah,
purpose.
but now we're back to you.
Well, now,
We circled back.
circle back.
Let's see what new subject that we can talk about.
All right. So look at this.
We're gonna hold it.
Are we gonna hold it in
We're
the
gonna
fire?
let these gentlemen get away with this. We'll just look
I
at
feel
how-
like Dr.
we're
Sharp
gonna have
is
dead
probably
radio
on my
waves.
side.
All right. Let's do this real quick.
What year?
House, will it stay Republican control or will it flip back to Democrat?
Flip to Democrat.
Okay.
I think it'll flip to Democrat, yeah.
I think it stays Republican by a very slight margin.
I think I'm going to go with flip with Democrat too. Senate,
But I'm the pessimist today. How weird.
Democrat.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Although it's an uphill
What do you
climb.
I guess I'll say Democrat, but
Yeah, Democrat.
All right,
Like
see,
the
I'm going to go.
trifecta
I think
sounds-
I think we're going to have a reversal. I think the Senate's going to flip to Republican, and the House is going to flip to Democrat. We made our predictions. We're running out of time.
And that was my very deep sigh.
Thank you both,
Yes, thank
Dr.
you.
Padgham and Dr. Sharp, for joining us. This has been great as always.
For her unstructured conversation.
Let's
Sorry we
not
didn't
wait
prep you
another
guys.
year to
When
do
you
this.
pull out these predictions in the future, I'm going to say fake news. I'm going to say my voice was altered by AI.
You have triggered.
That'll work. That'll be fair. All right. Thank you all for listening, and we want to remind you that
Democracy is not a spectator sport.
we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Hey everyone, this is Deborah, the resident Gen Z member of the Not My Generation podcast family. Not My Generation is produced in the Possibilities Inc. studio. This episode was produced by Lauren Peaches Keller. It was edited by Santiago Ramones. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. Send a voice memo to notmygeneration@raider.rose.edu and you could hear your voice on an upcoming episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the podcast with others. You can check out previous episodes on any podcast app and on our podcast website at notmygeneration.captivate.fm, where we also provide our show notes. And remember, you can follow Not My Generation on X, formerly known as Twitter, at NMG Podcast, and on Facebook at Not My Generation Podcast. We look forward to interacting with you soon.